Welcome to Community and Technology, where we connect the global community with news, information, and resources to hopefully help improve your life. I'm Stu Reid, and here's my co-host Dave Burstein. Hey, Dave.
Hello.
And we have a very special guest, not an unfamiliar one, but special nevertheless, Miss Polly Spain. She's a resident association leader and educator and technology aficionado. Polly, welcome back to Community and Technology.
Welcome and thank you for having me today. Hello,
Absolutely.
everyone.
Absolutely. Well, today we wanted to talk about something that I know is on a lot of folks' minds, and that is back to school and education. And Polly, I know you work in the public school system right here in New York City and are intimately involved with what's going on. So can you give us just an update what's going on? I thought I heard that they had pushed back the opening again for in-school learning. Give us I don't know what's going on. Bring us up to speed.
Well, originally the date was supposed to be September 16th, right? To phase in school as far as students coming in to attend class. They had to push the date back. Well, really, it's supposed to be October 1st, to be honest with you, because there were some locations that were not retrofitted with the PPE, and also the ventilation system had to be repaired, at a few locations here in Manhattan and also in Brooklyn. And so the union basically kind of stepped in because there was a pledge by the chancellor, and the mayor as well, to make sure before any student or any staff members return to the buildings that they're all retrofitted as far as the ventilation systems. The HVAC must be, up to par standard. Also to make sure every building has PPE, which consists of the masks and the gloves and the sanitizer. Plus they had to install decals throughout the buildings, like on the floor, notifying people to stay 6 feet apart. Decals had to be placed on classrooms. So there was a lot of work involved in getting the buildings ready. So there just wasn't enough time to actually begin September 16th. So what they did was they launched the remote component on the 16th for the high school students, because they figure they're independent, they don't have to be supervised. So those families who chose remote learning as an option, they were able to begin on the 16th. Now, with the blended learning component, that consists of a student coming into the building for 3 days, right, depending on the school and the location and the staff, and then doing remote learning for 2 days. So what happened, if you saw on the news, they started with the pre-K and K population, so they're phasing it in little by little, so that the younger children could enter the buildings, and the parents who need the service, they can go to work, because that's very, very important, right? The city, of course, wants to, jumpstart the economy again. And a lot of parents who are saying, what can I do? I know there were 100,000 seats promised through the Bridge program, which is a program that the mayor said that he would set up as an alternative to the public school, so that parents would have someone supervising their child during the day. But as far as I know, there's only 30,000 seats available right now, and you had to apply like in August, okay? So there's a long waiting list. And that's because, again, it's about staffing, okay? So those are a lot of the roadblocks that the DOE has come up against, and, those are the reasons why the dates have been pushed back. In addition to the pledge, a nurse has to be in every school building, okay? So they had to figure out where to put the nurse, what would be her duties, etc. They had to install these machines to take everyone's temperature. Staff who is going into the buildings, they have to fill out a form online every day or in person before they can enter the building, and basically saying, do you have a fever? Have you been around anyone who has COVID? Essentially, it's the same form you fill out when you go see a doctor or a physician at a hospital. So they have to fill that form out every single day before they're allowed to go into the building. And they have to show proof by their phone or whatever device that they've completed that form. So there's a lot of issues, that have to be addressed in such a short period of time.
Yeah, well, so you mentioned they have to have this form complete. Are they testing teachers and administrators as they come in or on any regular basis? Is that mandated at all?
Yes. So anyone, it doesn't matter if you're an administrator, a teacher, a safety agent, it doesn't matter. When you go into the building, there's like a device. It's on a stand that they're using. So basically it's right near the safety agent's desk. And so you have to be scanned for your temperature. If you have a temperature that reads above, I think 98.7 or 100, let's just say, you cannot enter the building. Whether your staff, it doesn't matter who you are, parent, child, it doesn't matter. That person cannot enter the building. You have to go home, okay? The other thing is, they did put in, like I said, the PPE, so everyone is mandated to wear the masks, okay? There is sanitizer stations in every classroom and in the bathrooms and throughout the buildings, okay? Safety agents right now are the ones that are monitoring the temperatures as far as when the individuals come into the buildings, okay? The nurses' duties have not really been defined clearly at this point. They basically are there in case a student gets sick or exhibits symptoms of COVID with coughing, okay? Because if they have a, high temperature, so let's just say a student is in the classroom and they start coughing and, maybe exhibiting symptoms, and maybe their temperature read was fine when they first entered the building, then they will be referred back to the nurse, temperature will be taken, but if they keep exhibiting symptoms that are defined as possibly COVID, then they will be asked to, see a physician. And so if for the smaller children, of course, the parent has to pick them up, okay? They do have isolation stations set up for that child, okay? To be isolated from the rest of the class if they determine that that person has those symptoms. Now with the staff as well, staff has to be checked as well. So what they're doing is 20% randomly of the staff is being asked to be tested. Okay, it's still voluntary, not mandatory, but let's just say if you refuse, then you will be asked to take leave, okay, without pay until you take the test. So even though they're saying it's voluntary, it's not mandatory, it really is. Yes, but they're like saying it's your choice if you want to stay home and not get paid, okay? Then it's your choice whether or not you want to take the test, right? So that is one precaution as well. And most of the staff, feels that that's appropriate because no one wants to get sick. And as we said in a lot of our meetings, because I'm on a lot of the committees for the reopening of the schools, we basically were concerned about that because we have no control over what anyone does once they leave the building after school at 3 o'clock, okay? So whether it's a child, whether it's a staff member, they may or not wear their mask when they're outside or traveling or with their family members, somebody could have COVID. So it's really not to me, 100% guarantee that the next day that they return that they're not infected, okay? So right now, it's kind of like touch and go because this is all new. There's no playbook, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like kind of going to the beach and, after like spring and summer, and you just kind of dip your feet in the water and to see if it's safe to go in further. So that's the way I look at this right now. We're putting everything in place for precautions, but there's still no guarantee, We won't know if it's going to work until we actually do what we're doing, right? Mm-hmm. So October 1st is the official opening, okay, where students are being phased in on different grade levels. Now, a lot of the charter schools have chosen to do remote completely, okay? It's only the public school system that is doing this blended learning approach right now. So it's going to be interesting you know, in December or January, when the charter schools start sending their students back to the buildings, how it's going to work out. Because a lot of the buildings have shared space
Right,
with the charter schools.
public and charter
Yeah,
shared, right?
exactly. Like charter schools could be on 2 or 3 floors mixed in with non-charter schools. Okay, so you have like 3 to 4 different schools in the building. So it's going to be interesting how they're going to work out that space, because now you're going to have density. Okay, and what precautions are they going to put in place? Like I know one building, for example, you know, one of the questions I asked is, prior to COVID, there was always a traffic jam getting into the building because there's only 2 exits, right? The main entrance and a side exit. So I said, what happens when you have 4 different schools in the building with over 2,000 students, right? Even if you're doing blended for 3 days, you cut that in half to 1,000, okay? And then the charter school has their own rules and regulations. They come in at 7 sometimes in the morning and they leave later. How are you going to manage that traffic that's coming in simultaneously and the density, right? So there's really not enough physical space to house everyone at the same time. So it's going to be interesting how the charter school sets up their schedule and, you know, works with the non-public school system as far as managing space. Okay.
Now, on the days when the public school students are coming in, are they all coming in, or are they staggering the days during the week? How are they doing that?
No, they're staggering the days, basically. So, for example, on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, one cohort may come in, okay? And according to, I'm just going to give like the estimate of one building that I worked on. What we figured out is, according to the dimensions, we could only get up to no more than 12 students in a space. Some classrooms could only have 4 students plus a staff member in a space. So that's the first thing we had to figure out over the summer, is get the square footage of each room in the building and then look at, you know, the enrollment and figure out how many students by square footage could fit in that space. And the furniture was not included. So that was a problem too, because, you know, it just has the square footage without furniture. So now you have to take away some space because of the furniture that's in there. Okay. So that was one issue that had to be addressed immediately. And we did that in August on one of the committees that I was on. And then after we did that, you know, you have different content area. You know, we have ESL, you know, there's different factors, believe me. It was not an easy task to kind of get this up and running, okay? So that's why I can understand the delay. And then, of course, you know, was the situation about health and safety, all right? There was no guarantee in August that we would have enough nurses, all right? We're still short of nurses, okay? We still need more nurses because, again, we have to deal with those children who are in pre-K, because remember the mayor had that new program that he had instituted with the 3-year-olds, all right? So they're going to need more space and they need more nurses. The other issue is that a lot of nurses who are working in the hospital are needed there. So where do you find your people? And then when it comes to the staff, as far as teachers, a lot of teachers are coming out of retirement. You know, they're using substitute teachers right now. And then a lot of administrators are being asked to come back into the classroom right now because they need them to manage, you know, the students. So like I said, it's a work in progress. You know, nothing to me has been written in stone, so to speak. We just have like a working framework right now. But as things progress, you know, and if we don't spike, then that's a good sign. If we spike, okay, then of course, what they had said is that if we have a situation where, again, a student exhibits symptoms, right? So everyone who was exposed to that student is at risk. They will have to be tested, okay? That person gets quarantined and so does everyone else. If it doesn't impact, say, the rest of the space, like the other, you know, classes, then that school can stay open. But there's a possibility that that building may have to close down within 2 days. As a matter of fact, when they started back, I would say September 16th, there was a situation in the Bronx where a school had to shut down, okay? Because someone had exhibited symptoms, you know. And a lot of the staff did not want to go into the building because they felt it wasn't safe. And one of the things we asked is, how long will it take if someone's identified as having COVID for that information to trickle down to the school, the local school? Because the Department of Health has that information, right? Someone goes in, they get tested, etc. That agency has that information. How fast will that information be divulged to the DOE? And then once the DOE gets that information, how fast will that information get to the administrators, right? And to the staff. So, you know, that has to be worked out as well. It's a lot of dynamics involved.
Wow, wow. Okay, well, you're listening to WHCR 90.3, the voice of Harlem, Community and Technology with Stu Reid and Dave Burstein. And today our guest is Polly Spain, educator and technology leader in public housing. And we're talking about back to school here in New York City. Now, Polly, are kids required to wear masks in the school? Is that a requirement?
Yes, it is. Students are required to wear masks. If the parent refuses to have their child wear a mask, they're not allowed in the building. That's mandatory. Okay. You know, also high school students as well, because that's one of the questions we brought up, you know, with the older students who are like 17, some of them 21, 24, and they might say, oh, you know, I don't want to wear a mask. I'm choking, you know, I'm suffocating. It's, you know, it's uncomfortable. Okay, well, then you can choose remote learning at home. Okay, but you cannot come into the building. So that is definitely mandatory, no questions about it. Mm-hmm. And parents are notified about that policy ahead of time. So that's why it's their choice to select remote learning. But if they select blended learning, where they know their child is coming into a school building for 3 days, then they must wear a mask. Now, if they don't have a mask, some parents may say, I can't afford a mask. I don't have a mask for my, you know, they might have 4 or 5 kids. We don't know. So we have to think of every possibility. We will supply them with a mask if they need a mask, okay? And a lot of the staff, of course, they're buying their own masks to wear. They were issued, I would say, maybe 10 masks, which, you know, that's not enough. The blue masks that, you know, basically look like those surgical masks that the doctors wear. That's what we were issued, along with the plastic gloves, okay, and a bottle of disinfectant to clean down the classroom furniture, such as computers, you know, smart boards, equipment. So that was given out immediately on the 16th. All right, so that the first 3 days was really spent getting the rooms and the spaces organized. We had inspectors, administrators, and the union going to every single building in New York City. The president of the UFT, along with another, you know, team of people that were delegated to do that, went to every single building, okay, to make sure that the system, especially for ventilation, was working. And that also windows have to be open too, partially. They cannot be closed. So one of the things that we talked about is we had a lot of buildings that are under construction, you know, and removing asbestos, working with the facade. And we said, okay, we have to leave the windows open. What's going to happen, you know, with that construction that's going on? Because all that dust is going to come into the classroom. So that had to be worked out too. Then you had the situation where some of the buildings are really, really old, so they didn't even have air conditioning systems, you know. So they had to get these portable machines stationed in the rooms. The custodians are mandated to clean the rooms at night. So that had to be worked out too with the custodians, because that's a separate entity. That's under the school-based authority. That's under the control of the DOE. And they have a union, you know, and So now they're being asked to take on responsibilities that they never had to take on before. So that had to be worked out as well. It had to be a collective effort, okay? Because
The
they have to
logistics
clean.
sound crazy, Polly.
I know it is. It is. It is. It really is. You know, the magnitude of what has to be done just for the students to be in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to do this every night, okay? Disinfect the buildings, wipe everything down, you know. Just like they do with the subway, it's the same thing in the classrooms. The cafeterias, the gym, you know, every space is being utilized. The other thing is with lunch and breakfast. It's like basically grab and go, because one thing that we had to talk about is if a student has to eat in the classroom and they have to take off their mask, right? So basically the teacher is told to face the back of them. Like say the students are facing the front, their face, and they're eating. The teacher has to be behind them, right? So that she doesn't get exposed to the air particles coming out of their mouth. So we had to figure out, when do we serve lunch and breakfast, okay? A lot of sites chose to do what we call a grab and go, where they take their lunch, you know, out and eat rather than be in the classroom. And each
When you say out, you
location
mean outside the building?
No, like, you know, outside of that classroom, you know, and a different space.
Okay.
So there was a lot of dynamics that had to be figured out depending on the site, the staff, and the resources. So every location is different, to be honest with you, you know, because, you know, you may have a site that doesn't have a space where they can eat, okay? You may not have the staff. You might have the space, but not the staff. So everyone had to kind of customize a plan that works for their location, okay? So no, it is crazy what we had to do. And it, you know, because I know I spent July, August.
Are you going in now, Pi? Are you going into a building or a classroom or a school facility?
No, I don't. I chose not to go in.
Okay.
Because basically I asked for medical accommodation because I have asthma, and that's one of the criteria from the, you know, health department and, you know, COVID, that if you have asthma. So I'll be honest with you, most of the staff, a lot of the staff has received medical accommodations, okay? And then also, so that had to be applied for, and that's only good up until December of this year, the end of the year, okay? I've spoken to a lot of my colleagues who have gone in, okay? And I'll be honest with you, they're still nervous. They, you know, they're going in because they're committed to the students, but in the back of their mind, they're hoping that they don't get sick, okay? And then, you know, they're worried because we've had colleagues who have, you know, passed on, okay? And so I applied for medical accommodation, and then I said, this way is up to me. If I want to go in, I can. You understand what I'm saying? But I'll be honest with you, I have a wait and see attitude. Because my doctor, who is a pulmonary expert, he had COVID. And he told me, he said, you should get medical accommodations, because he had it for 2 weeks in August. Okay? And he was telling me that he had on a mask, he was treating the patients, didn't touch them, he was 6 feet away, and he still got COVID. So he said he believes it's in the air. Okay? And he said that, you know, they really should shut down the school system at least for a year until they get a vaccine that works. He said, because, you know, life is precious. And he told me, he said, you should get medical accommodation. So based on his advice as a medical expert, I applied for medical accommodation.
Wow. Well, so what do you have any sense of what proportion of the teaching and administrative staff is actually going in? Is it half? Is it a third?
I would say, to be quite honest with you, about 70%, you know, even though the news says it's lower, I would say about 70% has medical accommodation.
Not going into the facility.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And some have retired. Some retired because they don't want to jeopardize their health and their family's health. So those who could retire have retired, okay, and left. And then a lot of them said, well, you know, some who said, I don't want to do remote teaching. I want to interact, you know. So they everyone had to make an individual choice, to be honest with you, you know. And hopefully, like I said, there won't be a spike. If there's a spike, you're going to see more people exit, you know. And that's why it's so hard to get people to cover the classes, because everyone, again, is concerned. There's no vaccine. You know, if you get sick, the hospital staff is already kind of taxed, okay? So hopefully you'll get service, or you may not. You know, if the hospital's overcrowded and, you know, somebody else may have priority over you and you may not make it out. So these are the things that people are talking about, you know. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of people were upset because they didn't get medical accommodation. They did not want to go in, but they had no other choice. Then you have staff that has children. They have to worry about childcare.
Right.
So that means if they go in, they have to pay for childcare, tutoring, you know. So it's a lot depending on each person's, you know, personal situation, put it that way. So it has really taken a toll, I feel, mentally and emotionally on everyone, because there are people, as I said, who have lost members in their family. We have a lot of colleagues who had COVID, all right, before it was announced publicly. You know, when they look back now, they say they believe they had COVID, okay? And so that's why they're nervous. You know, they're doing what they need to do, but they're nervous. They're not really comfortable about, oh, I'm so glad to be back in the building. No, they're not, because there's no guarantee. And then the thing is that the city is not liable, because you have, you know, you came in. You can't say, oh, if I get sick or God forbid, you know, you die. You can't sue the city and say, oh, you know, it's your fault, the building wasn't safe, because this is what was agreed to by the union. And, you know, that, okay, these are the conditions that our staff can enter the building in. So if you are one of the unfortunate ones that didn't get medical accommodation, okay, then you have to make that choice for yourself. Do I go in, you understand, and take a chance? Or do I do something else, you know, with my life right now? You know, that's a choice that everyone has to make.
No, earlier, Paula, you said a lot of the larger proportion of the charter school children are not going in, but the bulk of the public school children are. Do you have a sense of the proportion of public school kids that are actually going into the classroom? I mean, is that...
Well, I'll be honest with you, the numbers are low. Most of the parents have selected remote learning, because the parents don't have enough information, you know, as to whether their child will be safe. Again, there's no guarantee. So the majority of the parents have selected remote learning. The blended learning, I would say, is about 20%. 20% right now. Some of them chose, like, it was a higher number during the month of August, where it was like, okay, 60%, you know, chose blended. But as September approached and the dates were put out there, a lot of parents switched to remote immediately.
So are we in week 1 or week 2 of the school actually opening? What week are we in?
We're in week 2 of the DOE launching the new school year, because it actually officially started September 16th. We are in week 1 for the blended learning track, because the remote learning started last week on the 16th. Okay. Now, when they go in for the blended learning, they're still kind of doing remote anyway, because a lot of the staff is being paired with the on-site teacher. So for instance, I'm doing remote. My background is in special ed. So I would work with a math teacher or a reading teacher, you know, with that content area. So remotely, I can still engage with those students who are on site physically, all right? Because we have smart boards. So that teacher and I can still work together with that same population.
Mm-hmm.
So that teacher who's on site on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm just using those days as an example.
Mm-hmm.
I would still pick up that group on Thursday and Friday remotely, but we made a decision that we're going to work together 5 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
That's our choice. It's up to the individual teachers
Mm-hmm.
who are remote or on site if they want to work together, because we're still dealing with the same students. We're still delivering the same information.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I made that choice that, okay, even though I'm not on site, I will still, work with that instructor during those days that are on site to support my students who have special needs.
Mm-hmm. We're at the bottom of the hour. Let me just say that you're listening and watching WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlan. This is Community and Technology with Stu Reid and Dave Burstein, and our special guest today is Miss Polly Spain, New York City community leader, housing leader, and public school educator. Polly, I'd like you to talk a little bit more about this whole remote learning thing and how that's working out. You just mentioned before the break that the teachers had the option to participate all week long, or as you have, or maybe just a couple of days a week. What are the logistics of that? You talk about the whiteboard. Can you tunnel into the whiteboard remotely? Just walk us through some of how the remote learning works from a practical point of view.
Okay, so right now, if we're doing any type of instruction, we're using Google Classroom as the platform, okay? Mm-hmm. And as I said, there are smart boards in the classroom and desktops, laptops, etc. All right, so each student has been assigned ever since March when this situation first started and the DOE, distributed laptops and equipment. Every student was assigned a DOE email address, okay? So with that DOE email address, they can access Google Classroom. So they have their own account, all right? Mm-hmm. So each virtual classroom, again, is assigned to a teacher. We can communicate with them through email. We can do texting. A lot of us set up our own Google phone numbers. We do Google Meet, where through video, we can talk to each other and communicate with each other. Google Classroom is still adding more features. You know how you have this gallery view in Zoom? Mm-hmm. So Google now just added something where it looks like you're in an auditorium with seats, okay? Mm-hmm. So they added that feature. I happen to like Google Classroom, I'll be honest with you, because there's so many aspects to it. So what we would do is, if someone's in the classroom physically, they're looking at the smart board, the teacher would go online to Google Classroom. So every student can look at the smart board. They're going to see the same work or assignment that the teacher uploaded to Google Classroom. Or we can integrate YouTube, okay? We can pull in documents from Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, etc., and integrate that. Students can draw. There's so many aspects to it. So me as the remote teacher, what happens is that I'll get the link like I'm doing now, okay? And they'll see me on the screen, on the smart board, and I can talk to them too. And because there's a camera in the classroom, I can see them as well, and they can see me. Mm-hmm. So we can interact and engage with each other. Mm-hmm. So, and the teachers and all the staff, we've been given a lot of training since March over the summer as well. Ongoing training provided by the DOE and also by Google. So we're well, versed in using the platform. And then we all work together collectively. We collaborate together to come up with new projects. So I think, in my opinion, I feel that it's an enriching experience for the students. It's not so alienated as some people think. They're not just looking at a screen, okay? or they're not just working on their own at home without any support or help. For instance, like what I do is I send out a message early in the morning for them to get up. Okay. They get like an alert every morning, like a song that we've all selected.
Mm-hmm.
And this way, that's the alert. All right, it's time to log on. I'll be honest with you, back in March when we first started, it was hilarious. We had students who would dial in and not like show up like video wise, okay? And some of them would be in the bed, talking with the covers over their head. Some of them, it was kind of crazy. But now they know you have to be up and alert. You can't just dial in, and put it on speaker. You have to actually show your face, and we need to work together. But a lot of them, they gave in a lot of assignments, and it was a learning curve for them because they had to learn keyboarding, how to type. They know how to do the texting with the thumbs, but it's different when you have to use your 10 fingers, right?
Right, that's right.
And type out term papers. But what we tell them, is that now you have more of an opportunity, to be honest with you, to express who you are. It's not just the talk and chalk and you're sitting in the classroom, the teacher's doing all the lecturing and you're not giving feedback, because we want them to have discussions, right? And we want them to be creative. So I love it. We also use the virtual Google glasses, and some of them make their own. And that's fun for the younger kids and older kids as well, because we love to explore. We use Google Earth. So we type in addresses all over the world, because we have students who are from all over the world, and they get to see their town or their village, so it's very interesting. So far we've gotten positive feedback. Most of the students love it.
Yeah, it sounds like, and I've heard you say in other conversations that in a way, the educational experience has been enriched and enhanced because of the technology and the remote learning requirements. Is that what? Fair statement?
Oh, definitely. That's definitely. I mean, as I said, this generation knows that, to me, digital environments, because that's what they were born into. Like I said, they're the Omega generation. So they can't even imagine a world where there was no cell phone, no texting, no digital platform. So I always say that we're being forced, because of COVID, to move into the 21st century when it comes to education. Because I've always advocated for technology, and I said we're not using it the way we should. Our agricultural system, back in the days, the one-room schoolhouse, that's over. That system, it's over. We need to prepare our young people, the next generation, to learn how to work collectively, to learn how to be creative, to learn how to take ownership of their education, right? Because they're the ones that have to apply whatever we're teaching them in the real world. And so technology, I think, is an outstanding tool to utilize to make that happen. And then I find that we have to get rid of these walls and these barriers that we have. Those of us who are from the pre-21st century, okay? We have to take away those fears of the unknown and, keep up, because a lot of these children that are coming into the world, as I said, you have babies that are swiping phones right away. They're like only a month old and they're so alert looking at the screen. So that tells you something right then and there, that we're ready. So I do feel that remote learning is here to stay. I do say that because we are the largest school system in the United States, right, here in New York, and I feel that we need to be a world leader as far as ushering education, forward, okay? Because we're the number one supposedly financial center of the world, right? We're the largest education system of the world. So everyone kind of looks to New York, to be honest with you, to be the model, in other countries, because I've been to other countries and we talked about education, okay? And they ask me all the time, what are we doing over here? And I just, I tell my peers that we need to get it together. I just feel that we're behind the 8 ball, to be honest with you. And quite frankly, I'm happy that we're using this format right now, technology. And I think we should make it the best that it can be, because it's definitely here to stay. No one is going to go back to the old system of just the talk and chalk, you know. So we need to get the equipment that we need. We need to make sure everyone has access to the internet, has a signal, okay, and so that this way everyone can participate in this new, what people call the new norm.
Mhm. You know, one of the things that you touched on just a moment ago, I just wanted you to elaborate a little bit. Uh, you said that the students have to take control of their own learning, and I'm kind of thinking, my sense is that because the teacher's not there sitting on top of them in the classroom, that they have to be more responsible for their own learning as maybe older students do. Can you just kind of elaborate on that a little bit?
Right, because, all right, the old model has always been you wait for the teacher to direct you as to when to respond to a question or information.
Mhm.
It should be the other way around. It should be the student, you understand, asking the questions of the teacher, okay, and working together in partnership to get a response. So now, because of these tools, because students can do research at the push of a button, visually, you know, audio wise, there's no reason for them not to explore. This is an age of discovery and exploration. So it's exciting for the learner, because I have found over the years that students don't want to just sit there while you're talking. That's the worst thing to do. They're bored, they're disengaged. Oh, when is this going to be over? Please shut up. Okay.
Mhm.
I find when you give them control of the knowledge and you just guide them, they're more excited, and they're, to me, you find out what that person can do, because I truly believe that everyone is endowed with creative gifts that we need to pull out of the student. So I'm looking at this now as an opportunity for them to do just that. Okay. So yes, without the teacher, this teacher's still there, but in a different format and a different role. Okay. We're here to guide them, not to program and condition them onto what I want them to know. No, it's not about us. It's about the individual person. That to me is a gift, okay?
Mhm.
Because they already have it in them mentally, intellectually, in some kind of capacity. We are, to me, responsible, I feel, as an educator to bring that out and help develop what they're already born with as far as their innate abilities,
Mhm. Mhm.
okay? So that's what we need to change, the way we think, and have provided public school education, because they've always done that in the private school systems. They've always had smaller classrooms. They've always allowed their students to explore and engage, okay, and to discover. They never use that approach and model where they're just sitting there with their hands folded,
Yeah.
looking at someone
The
talking. Yeah.
warehouse.
Like
Mhm.
we don't want, you know, we don't want crones and zones and drones, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
We want viable, productive citizens of
Mhm.
the 21st century, okay?
Right, 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 right.
That are free and do not feel that they're inhibited from utilizing whatever creativity they have.
Mhm. Okay, you're listening to WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. This is Community and Technology with Stu Reid, Dave Burstein, and special guest, New York City educator and community activist and leader, Polly Spain. Dave, did you want to join the conversation? You've been kind of quiet for the first bit of the show. You have some comments, some questions for Polly? Well, I don't know. We may have lost Dave.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
That's
good. That's
okay.
okay. Dave,
Yeah,
whenever you come back, come on back.
yeah, yeah.
But in the meantime, we're talking about remote learning, and I'm really intrigued, Polly. You're saying that this is a transformative period and an opportunity to really improve education, to take it into the next century, into the current century, and to really transform what has been, in many ways, a dysfunctional system in public education, maybe to one that's functional. Do you see that really happening, or is it a possibility?
I see the possibilities, as I said. Again, we need to seize this moment all right, and put aside our fears, those of us who are in a position to do so. Because as I said, it's about discovery. You won't know until you try something. And from what I'm seeing with my own eyes, as I said, I've always advocated for technology. And so I'm not, how you say, intimidated. Like, I'm looking at this as opening up a whole new door, right, when it comes to education, and I'm pushing for it. And I'm saying to my colleagues and peers, okay, we need to grab hold of this and take it as a way to show the next generation what we can do. You understand?
Mhm.
And how to utilize this opportunity, this moment in time, to move education, especially for the public school system, in a different direction. Because the majority of our students are students of color, okay? And they're now able to get information that they wouldn't ordinarily have access to, because they have the freedom, whether they're at home or in the street, as long as they have a signal, okay, to use the internet, the World Wide Web, the digital platform to create. I mean, look at I'll be honest with you. A lot of the young people using YouTube, look at all the creative content that they're putting out on YouTube, all right? And turning that into an income source,
Right.
I mean, and so that's just the beginning. So I'm looking at what else will they create? They're learning how to do coding in kindergarten, and 3-year-olds know how to code and write apps and do programming, etc. So when it comes to saying the traditional way, I go to high school, I get my high school diploma or GED equivalency, go on to college. College is not the end all and do all for everyone. Okay. A lot of times I tell my students, if you're going to spend 4 years somewhere, you need to get a return on your investment. Now, so with the computer age now, you can become a computer programmer or engineer and make $150,000 a year, and you don't have to sit somewhere for 4 years. And you can teach yourself and get certified. I mean, there's too many opportunities out here to become entrepreneurs.
That's right.
To be empowered. Because those are where the jobs are at today. The industrial age is over. It's the digital and technology age that we're in right now.
And I would also add just what you're saying, the age of the corporation is taking care of everybody and hiring everybody. That's finished as well. I never really believed in that, but now in the COVID and post-COVID environment, you're seeing so many layoffs and kind of downturns of so much industry. It's really about creating your own income. It's not going out and finding a job. It's creating your own income. And I'm just so happy to hear you talk about the youth embracing technology as creators. That's one of the things that we talk about on Community and Technology all the time, is transforming our folks from mere consumers of technology to owners and creators in the technology space.
Yeah. I mean, because they do so much with just a phone. You understand what I'm saying? Creating content, writing, and then like I make them understand you're an excellent writer because you're writing content all the time. You're designing. A lot of artists, I said, you're already a graphic artist. A lot of them just don't have the label to go with the talent that they're already producing. So I make them understand very clearly, you're already an entrepreneur if you're creating your own content and you're making money. Okay. You don't need to go to a 4-year college to get a piece of paper to tell you what you already are. You understand? And I always tell them, work for yourself, be an entrepreneur, because this is the time to do it. Nothing wrong with working for someone else, but you don't have to do the 30 years and get the gold watch like former generations did, because they're not giving out any gold watches anymore. We talk about what's going to happen when you get laid off. We discuss those things, okay? So I always tell the parents, and I encourage them too, for the little ones as well, plant that seed in them early, because this is the new age, and we're not going back. Right. Like you said earlier, you got Google, you got Amazon, you got all these big corporations. They're desperate for programmers and engineers. Somebody has to fix the machine. Somebody has to write the language for the machines, etc. There's so many programs out there for minorities and people of color and women, you know, that they can go and get training for free. They're desperate. Okay, so I definitely let my students know, seize this opportunity and take advantage of it. Okay, because it's not as challenging as you think, and it's fun. They enjoy it. They don't want the ink and the paper and the writing. Like, they hate to write with a pen and paper, to be honest with you. It's like, yeah, I want to do digital. And why should you, if you can talk, right? And just say what you need to say and the machine does it for you. All right. So you just need to understand the format of the language, but now use the tools. All right. That's where we're at right now. And there's so many advantages. You can talk to your friends. You can visit all over the world, any site you want to, and be right there. Okay. Yes, we still need social interaction. Okay. I'm not saying that, you know, that should be eliminated altogether. But when it comes to education, I just feel that we should be immersed and engaged, not just sitting up there in theory and talking. We need to engage them. And this is what's really going on. You know, give them the opportunity to say what they need to say, because, you know, you'll be surprised how intelligent these young people are.
Okay, Paula, we've got about 5 minutes left. And for a moment, I would just like to focus on parents. I know you talked a lot about your teacher training, and I know you're very tech savvy before you even got the Board of Ed training. You're already on top of technology. Many parents may not be. Well, how would you advise parents today as the kids are making this transition, as they're working at home with their laptops, with their computers and digital devices? How would you advise parents to help move that process along?
Well, I definitely recommend workshops. The UFT, wonderful resource. They offer free parent workshops, okay? You can't go in at 52 Broadway, but every Wednesday and Thursday, they have different workshops on computer technology. And even if they go to the DOE website, they have free classes on how to use the equipment, because the DOE is giving it out, but they also want the parents to feel comfortable with it. And we ourselves offer free instruction on how to use the equipment that we provide to them. So it's not like we're leaving them out in the cold and asking them to figure it out themselves. Now, a lot of parents may not have the time because they're working and they have other kids to deal with. You understand what I'm saying? So what we advise them to do, go to YouTube, all right? Because visually you can get a video that's going to show you step by step how to turn the machine on. And then if you still need help, we'll walk you through it, you know? So as I said, there's really no excuse not to learn and utilize the equipment now, you know, because it's your child. You want your child to succeed, okay? So you really, as a parent, have to carve out the time, you know, whether it's 10 minutes a day or 15 minutes a day. But most of the staff, if a parent really doesn't understand because of language, let's just say we have translators that can translate in any language other than just Spanish. We got Russian, we got Hindu, we have for everybody, okay? So if you need a translator to walk you through, we have that as well. And a lot of the programs are in different languages, okay? So therefore, you know, if you as a parent feel scared or intimidated, you know, you're not alone. We have groups, we have other parents who help parents. Another group is called the Children's Advocacy. They advocate for children specifically. Wonderful free resource as well. They also give workshops. They have a website, they're online.
So just Google them, Children's Advocacy.
Yeah, and basically they offer workshops. They even, like, say parents who may not understand their rights for special ed, they advocate for them as well. So there's a lot of organizations out here, to be honest with you, that parents can call and they will work with them to help them. So what we do is we advise them, because one thing we do have in the DOE is social workers. So a lot of social workers will help parents as well. Every school usually has what's called a parent coordinator, and their job is to give out information to the parents work with the parents.
Mm-hmm.
So nowadays, like I said, to me, this generation is very fortunate because there's so many free services out here, so many organizations that want to help, you know, those students, especially students of color, which is the predominant group in the public school and who live in public housing. I always say that, okay? So I get to see both sides of the coin as far as what's needed, all right? So I'm fortunate in that way because I'm in a position, you know, to say this is where we need to go, okay?
Now, you mentioned just one quick question. You mentioned that the kids get an email account. Are the parents tied in into the email that the kids get from the teachers? How does that work?
Yes. So again, when say a student is registered in the school, right? Parent is also contacted. Parent has an email as well. So that email again will have the teacher's name. You know, if the teacher's emailing that person or that student. Parents have their own account if they want it as well. The information is secure, right? No, there's definitely access. The parent knows everything going on as far as communication. Everything's above board. Everything's transparent, you know. And that's one of the things that we insisted on is security. The other thing that, you know, I raised at one of the meetings is that we've always had a form prior to COVID anyway, that in order to say use video or photos or anything of a student, if you know you're producing a play or show, you know, we had a form you had to sign off on. So now that's in reverse. Now what we're doing is putting together a form also for students and parents that our images will not be utilized in an inappropriate way. So there's a lot of legal parameters that still need to be ironed out. I'll be quite frank with you, okay? Because we're walking into a whole new area, you know, intellectual property. Like I said, you know, we got social media. So we want to make sure that everyone's protected and that, you know, when we're engaging with students online, you know, that no one's security, even their data on their machines are at risk. Because I know when we first started with Zoom back in March, third parties had access to sensitive information. And that was one of the issues that I brought up. Like, we need to have better mechanisms. I think I brought it up to you, as a matter of fact, earlier.
Yes, you did.
And so I'm glad that they changed. And what they did was they set it up where that information basically only goes to the DOE server, so to speak. And that, you know, somehow it's not divulged to third parties, put it that way. They put better security in place.
Wow,
that's something that we have to be careful about.
No, I'm just going to say we're about running out of time, winding down. I just wanted to thank you. We've been talking here on Community and Technology with Polly Spain, and she's just been a wealth of information about what's going on in public education and public housing here in New York City. Any final comments before we sign off, Polly?
Well, my final comment is that I want everyone out there, you know, parents, to feel comfortable, know that, you know, we have the best intentions to make sure that your child receives the best education here, okay? And so, again, feel comfortable knowing that the DOE, the UFC, staff, everyone is working together to make sure your child succeeds.
Thank you, Polly Spain. It's been a great show with you today. And Dave Burstein, you've been listening to Community and Technology on WHCR 90.3 FM. Tune in next week and hear more about how technology can help empower and improve your life. Thanks for tuning in.